Imagine waking up in a small hotel room on the third floor of the New Yorker Hotel in Manhattan. It's January 1943, and you haven't left this room in days. There's a "Do Not Disturb" sign hanging on your door, and it's been there for 48 hours. Your only companion is a white pigeon perched on the windowsill, a bird you love as deeply as any human has ever loved another person. Inside your mind, 700 inventions rotate in perfect three-dimensional clarity. You can see every wire, every coil, every mathematical formula. But you can also see flashing lights that blind you to reality. You hear voices explaining principles of physics that haven't been discovered yet. Your hands move involuntarily, counting everything. The steps you took to the bathroom, the cubic volume of your coffee cup, the number of tiles on the ceiling. Everything must be divisible by 3, or your skin crawls with invisible insects. You cannot touch human hair without feeling violently ill. The sight of a pearl nearly causes you to have a seizure. Outside your door, the FBI is waiting. They're waiting for you to pass away so they can seize the weapon you've been designing in your mind for years. A death ray capable of bringing down 10,000 enemy airplanes from 250 miles away. You are Nikola Tesla, and your mind is both the most brilliant and the most tortured prison ever constructed. You're tuned to the Velvet Obscura, and tonight I will tell you the dark story of a man whose genius was so profound it destroyed him. A man who could see the future but couldn't escape the compulsions that ruled his every waking moment. A man who changed the world with alternating current electricity but died penniless and alone, in love with a bird, while government agents waited outside to confiscate the secrets locked inside his failing brain. This is the story of what it would actually be like to spend just one day inside Nikola Tesla's mind, and why you almost certainly wouldn't survive it. If these stories help you drift off, I'd really appreciate a quick like or subscribe. It helps more than you know. And I'm always curious where you're listening from tonight. Drop a comment with your location. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Because you're about to experience 24 hours inside the most extraordinary and tormented consciousness in human history. A mind that lit the world, but could never find peace in the darkness. The first thing you notice when consciousness returns is that your eyes are already open, but you're not seeing the hotel room. Instead, you're seeing blueprints. Perfect, three-dimensional blueprints rotating in space that exists only inside your skull. This is your eidetic memory at work, the photographic recall that allowed the real Nikola Tesla to design and test inventions entirely in his mind without ever building a physical prototype. Every book you've ever read exists in your memory, word for word. Every mathematical equation you've encountered can be retrieved and manipulated with perfect accuracy. Every invention you've ever conceived spins in this internal laboratory, waiting for your attention. But this gift comes with a terrible price. The images won't stop. They appear without your permission, overlaying the actual world like a malfunctioning augmented reality system you cannot remove. As you try to focus on the cracked ceiling above your bed, you instead see electromagnetic fields pulsing through the hotel's wiring. When you attempt to look at your hands, you see the molecular structure of your skin, the electrical impulses traveling through your nervous system, the atomic bonds holding your flesh together. This is what Tesla described in his autobiography as being plagued by strong flashes of light that would appear and completely obscure real objects, accompanied by pictures of things and scenes which had the property of real things. You force yourself to sit up, and immediately the compulsions begin. Before you can do anything else, before you can think about breakfast, or checking on the pigeon, or addressing the crushing loneliness that defines your existence, you must count. The pattern of cracks in the ceiling must be counted and verified as divisible by 3. You count once. 18 cracks. That's acceptable. 18 divided by 3 equals 6. But did you count correctly? The obsessive thought arrives with the force of physical pain. You must count again to be certain. 18 again. But what if you missed one? What if there's actually 19? The number 19 is not divisible by 3. The thought of being surrounded by a number not divisible by 3 makes your skin crawl, makes your breathing quicken, makes panic rise in your chest like water in a sinking ship. You count a third time. 18. The number 3 has ruled your life since childhood. It's not a preference or a superstition. It's a compulsion so powerful that it has shaped every major decision you've ever made. You chose this room, number 3327, specifically because of its numerical properties. 3 plus 3 equals 6. 2 plus 7 equals 9, both divisible by 3. The floor number, 33, is 11 times 3. These calculations bring a momentary sense of safety, a brief respite from the chaos that is your normal mental state. But now, you must wash your hands. You stand on legs that barely support your weight anymore. At 86 years old, standing 6 feet 2 inches tall, you weigh perhaps 135 pounds. Your body has been consuming itself for years. The 1937 taxi accident that broke 3 of your ribs and severely wrenched your back never properly healed. You're malnourished because your obsessive-compulsive disorder has narrowed your acceptable foods to such a limited selection that you can barely sustain yourself. You shuffle to the small bathroom, each step carefully counted. 18 steps from bed to sink. Acceptable. The water runs over your hands. Once, twice, 3 times. But it doesn't feel right. The contamination, whether real or imagined, your rational mind can no longer distinguish, still clings to your skin. You wash 3 more times, and 3 more. Your hands are raw and cracked from decades of this ritual. The skin bleeds easily now. But the compulsion is stronger than pain, stronger than rationality, stronger than the part of your mind that knows this is madness. This is what modern psychologists would diagnose as severe obsessive-compulsive disorder. But in 1943, there is no diagnosis, no treatment, no understanding. There is only the compulsion and your desperate attempts to satisfy it. As you dry your hands on a towel that must be folded in thirds, you catch sight of yourself in the mirror. The face staring back is gaunt, haunted, ancient. Deep-set eyes that once charmed society's elite now look like caves. Your hair, which you once kept impeccably groomed, is thin and wild. You look like a ghost, and in many ways, you are. The man you once were. The celebrity scientist who dined with Mark Twain, who demonstrated his inventions to stunned audiences at Madison Square Garden, who lit the Chicago World's Fair with alternating current. That man died years ago. What remains is this shell, this prisoner of compulsions and visions, counting his way through each remaining day. Breakfast arrives on a tray left outside your door. The hotel staff knows better than to knock. They know about the "Do Not Disturb" sign that has become a permanent fixture. They know about your peculiarities, your demands, your occasional refusal to pay bills. You are both famous and notorious, a former giant reduced to an eccentric hermit living on the charity of the Yugoslav American community and the patience of hotel management. You bring the tray inside and immediately begin the ritual of calculating the cubic volume of the coffee cup. This isn't optional. Your mind compels you to measure, to calculate, to verify that the universe is behaving according to mathematical principles divisible by 3. The cup holds approximately 18 cubic inches of liquid. Acceptable. You count the pieces of toast. 2. Not divisible by 3. Panic rises immediately. You break one piece in half, creating 3 pieces. Better. Not perfect, but better. As you lift the coffee cup to your lips, you calculate its weight, its temperature, the rate at which heat is dissipating into the surrounding air. Your mind cannot simply experience coffee. It must analyze coffee, measure coffee, understand every physical principle involved in the existence of coffee. This is exhausting. This has always been exhausting. But you cannot stop it any more than you can stop your heart from beating. The waitress who prepared your breakfast had hair. You know this because you saw her yesterday, before you retreated into your room. The memory of her hair, dark, curling, very much attached to a human head, makes you feel ill even now. Tesla once stated that he could not bear to touch human hair, except perhaps at the point of a revolver. This wasn't metaphor or exaggeration. The sensation of human hair against his skin produced such profound revulsion that it bordered on phobia. Modern psychologists might classify this as a specific tactile sensitivity common in some neurodivergent individuals, but combined with your other compulsions and sensory issues, it's simply another prison bar. You remember the dinner party, decades ago now, when a wealthy patroness wore a pearl necklace. The moment you saw those perfect spheres gleaming against her neck, you felt your vision narrow, your breath catch, your entire body respond as though confronted with mortal danger. Tesla described in his writings that the sight of a pearl would almost give me a fit. The same was true for peaches, for anything too round, too spherical. The geometric perfection of a sphere triggered something in your brain that registered as wrongness, as danger, as something to be fled. You left that dinner party abruptly, adding to your reputation as an eccentric, as someone who couldn't function in polite society. But they didn't understand. It wasn't rudeness. It was survival. You eat your modified breakfast alone, as you have eaten every meal for longer than you can remember. You have been celibate your entire life, 86 years without romantic love, without physical intimacy, without the comfort of another human being's touch. You have proclaimed this celibacy as essential to your scientific work, insisting that sexual energy diverted toward romantic pursuits would diminish your mental capabilities. You told reporters that a man who has devoted his life to work has no time for love. But was that true? Or was it rationalization for a mind that couldn't tolerate the messy unpredictability of human connection? At 9 o'clock in the morning, you hear the familiar flutter of wings outside your window. Your heart, your damaged, elderly heart, beats faster with something that might be called joy if you still remembered what joy felt like. You move to the window as quickly as your failing body allows, and there she is, a white pigeon with light gray tips on her wings. Except she isn't really there. This pigeon is one of thousands you feed, but the pigeon, the one you loved, has been gone for 21 years. The real story, the one you told your biographer John O'Neill, and that is now preserved in historical records, is almost too painful to recount. You had been feeding pigeons for years, thousands of them, in Bryant Park and other locations around Manhattan. It became a ritual, a compulsion, perhaps the only interaction with living beings that didn't trigger your various anxieties and aversions. But there was one pigeon who was different. A female, pure white with gray-tipped wings, who you claimed could find you anywhere in the city. You said you could wish for her and she would come. You said you understood each other, that you communicated without words. You told O'Neill, and these are the actual words preserved from 1943, "I loved that pigeon as a man loves a woman, and she loved me. As long as I had her, there was a purpose to my life." Think about that statement for a moment. You, Nikola Tesla, the man who gave the world alternating current, who lit entire cities, who held 700 patents, found your life's purpose not in your world-changing inventions, but in the affection of a bird. In 1922, 21 years before your passing, that pigeon came to your window one final time. You described seeing two powerful beams of light streaming from her eyes. Then she folded her wings and passed away in your arms. You said, "I knew that my life's work was finished." And in a sense, you were right. You lived another 21 years, but the creative spark, the driving force that had produced such world-changing innovations, largely died with that bird. What remained were obsessions, the death ray, the wireless power transmission that never quite worked, the increasingly paranoid theories about corporate theft and government surveillance. The pigeon at your window now is not her. You know this rationally. But your mind, desperate for connection, desperate for purpose, projects her memory onto every white pigeon you see. You spend several minutes watching this bird, feeding it seeds you've hoarded, talking to it in soft tones that no human being has heard you use in decades. The pigeon cares nothing for your genius. It cares nothing for your patents or your inventions or your contributions to human civilization. It simply accepts your food and your attention without judgment, without expectation, without the betrayal that you've learned to expect from every human interaction. When the pigeon flies away, you return to your bed, exhausted, despite having been awake for less than 3 hours. But your mind won't let you rest. The visions begin again, stronger now. You see the rotating magnetic field that came to you in Budapest in 1882, when you were walking with a friend and reciting Goethe. The image arrived with such clarity, such perfection, that you stopped walking and drew the complete design of an alternating current motor in the dirt with a stick. That single vision revolutionized electrical engineering. That single moment, which you could not control, which simply appeared in your consciousness like a gift from an unknown God, changed human civilization. But now, in 1943, the visions have changed character. They still arrive with blinding clarity, but they're mixed with memories, with regrets, with faces of people long gone. You see Thomas Edison's office in 1884. You're young, newly arrived in America with 4 cents in your pocket, a book of poetry, and a head full of calculations. You have a letter of introduction to Edison that reads, "I know 2 great men, and you are one of them. The other is this young man." Edison hired you immediately, and you foolishly believed you'd found a mentor, perhaps even a father figure. Edison challenged you to redesign his direct current generators, promising $50,000, a fortune in 1884 money, if you could improve their efficiency. You worked obsessively, nearly around the clock for months. Your eidetic memory and ability to visualize machinery in 3 dimensions allowed you to identify and correct flaws that other engineers missed entirely. You redesigned 24 different types of machines. You completed the task perfectly, delivering everything Edison had requested and more. When you asked for the promised payment, Edison laughed. "Tesla," he said, "you don't understand our American humor." He refused to pay, not a single dollar. The betrayal was complete. It wasn't just the money, though $50,000 would have changed your life's trajectory entirely. It was the realization that trust was a liability, that human beings would exploit genius without conscience, that your naive faith in human decency was a weakness to be discarded. You quit immediately and spent the next year digging ditches for $2 per day. The greatest electrical mind in America, perhaps in the world, breaking your back with manual labor because you trusted the wrong man. This memory plays in your mind now with the clarity of yesterday, though nearly 60 years have passed. The betrayal never fades. The lesson never softens. Trust no one. Eventually, George Westinghouse recognized your genius and purchased your alternating current patents in 1888. This led to the War of Currents, the bitter public battle between Edison's direct current system and your alternating current system. Edison, unable to compete on technical merits, launched a propaganda campaign to paint alternating current as deadly and dangerous. He paid people to publicly execute animals using AC power, most infamously arranging the execution of Topsy the elephant in 1903. Edison tried to make Westinghouse into slang for being executed by electricity to associate your technology with death. But you won. In 1893, your alternating current system lit the Chicago World's Fair, and the world saw that AC power was superior, more efficient, capable of transmitting over longer distances, simply better in every measurable way. In 1896, your designs powered the first major hydroelectric plant at Niagara Falls, and alternating current became the standard for electrical power generation worldwide. You vindicated yourself technically, but Edison's betrayal poisoned something in you permanently. You made increasingly poor business decisions afterward, trusting the wrong people and rejecting those who might have helped you. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon now, and your mind travels to 1901, to the beginning of your greatest dream, and ultimately, your most devastating failure. Wardenclyffe Tower. You can see it clearly even now, a massive structure on Long Island, 187 feet tall, topped with a 55-ton metal dome. This wasn't just another invention. This was going to be your gift to humanity. Free wireless electricity for every person on Earth. You envisioned a world without power lines, without energy bills, without the infrastructure that enriched corporations while keeping ordinary people dependent. Electric power is everywhere, you said, present in unlimited quantities, and can drive the world's machinery without the need of coal, oil, gas, or any other of the common fuels. J.P. Morgan, one of the wealthiest and most powerful men in America, initially invested $150,000 in the project. But Morgan didn't believe in free energy. He wanted wireless telegraphy, radio communication that could be commercialized and controlled. When Morgan realized your true intention was to transmit power freely through the atmosphere, making it impossible to meter and charge for, he withdrew his support. According to some accounts, Morgan said something to the effect of, "If anyone can draw on the power, where do we put the meter?" Whether those exact words were spoken is debated by historians, but the sentiment was clear. Free energy threatened the entire economic structure of the electrical power industry. You poured your own money into Wardenclyffe. You went deeply into debt. You mortgaged your future on this tower that would prove your theories and transform civilization. It was never completed. By 1906, financial problems forced you to abandon the project. In 1917, during the First World War, the tower was dynamited and sold for scrap metal. You had to watch as your greatest vision, the culmination of decades of theoretical work, was literally torn down and destroyed. That failure broke something fundamental in you. Some historians and engineers who have studied your notes believe Wardenclyffe might have worked. The mathematics of wireless power transmission have proven sound in later decades. We now use similar principles for wireless charging of phones and other devices, though at much shorter ranges. But whether your specific design could have transmitted useful amounts of power across global distances remains unknown. The tower was destroyed before the experiments could be completed. One of history's greatest what-ifs was demolished for $15,000 in scrap value. After Wardenclyffe, your paranoia deepened. You became convinced that corporate interests had deliberately sabotaged you, that competitors were stealing your ideas, that powerful people wanted to suppress your inventions. Some of these suspicions were justified. Industrial espionage was common in that era, and your innovations were valuable enough to steal. But some suspicions began to seem excessive, began to suggest a mind slipping from justified caution into paranoid ideation. You started hiding your work, trusting no one, making claims about inventions you couldn't or wouldn't demonstrate publicly. Which brings us to the death ray. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, lying in your hotel room, your mind turns obsessively to your Teleforce weapon. In 1934, you announced to the press that you had invented a particle beam weapon of unimaginable power. The newspapers dubbed it the death ray, though you preferred the term Teleforce. You claimed it could shoot down 10,000 enemy airplanes from 250 miles away. You said it could make armies drop dead in their tracks. You described a focused beam of charged particles traveling at velocities sufficient to bring down fleets of aircraft or destroy armies at distances previously thought impossible. The technical specifications you described involved an open-ended vacuum tube with a gas jet seal that would allow particles to exit, a method of charging tiny tungsten or mercury particles to millions of volts, and a system of electrostatic repulsion to direct them in a focused beam. You even wrote a treatise titled The New Art of Projecting Concentrated Non-Dispersive Energy Through Natural Media, which is now housed in the Nikola Tesla Museum in Belgrade. The document exists. The question is whether the device it describes could actually work. You never demonstrated the death ray publicly. You never built a working prototype that anyone else witnessed in operation. You claimed it existed perfectly formed in your eidetic memory, that you had tested it completely through mental simulation and calculation, that you didn't need to build a physical version to know it would work. This was consistent with your earlier methods. You had famously designed entire systems in your mind before ever touching physical materials. The rotating magnetic field motor worked perfectly on the first physical build because you had already built and tested it mentally. So perhaps the death ray was equally valid. But there's another possibility that haunts historians and raises questions about your mental state in your final decades. In the 1930s, when you owed a massive bill to the Governor Clinton Hotel and couldn't pay, you allegedly offered the hotel management your death ray as collateral. You placed it in a sealed wooden box in the hotel's safe and warned them never to open it, claiming it was extremely dangerous. After your passing in 1943, when government agents finally opened that box, do you know what they found? A multi-decade resistance box, a common piece of electrical testing equipment found in every laboratory before the turn of the century. Old parts, junk, essentially, in a fancy box. Did you deliberately fool the hotel with worthless equipment, keeping the real death ray elsewhere? Was the real design only in your mind, never committed to physical form? Or had you, by the 1930s, lost the ability to distinguish between your mental simulations and physical reality? The question remains unanswered. John G. Trump, an MIT professor and the uncle of future President Donald Trump, was called in by the National Defense Research Committee to examine your materials after your death. His official report stated there was nothing which would constitute a hazard in unfriendly hands. But the government also classified many of your documents and kept them secret for decades. Some remain classified even now. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and you're experiencing what you experience most afternoons: auditory phenomena that you insist are not hallucinations, but rather a form of enhanced perception. Throughout your life, you reported hearing voices, but you were always careful to distinguish these from schizophrenic hallucinations. You described them as insights or inspirations that arrived with an auditory component, as though someone were explaining complex principles directly into your mind. Modern neuroscience might classify this as a form of synesthesia, where abstract mathematical and physical concepts become associated with sensory experiences, including sound. Or it might be evidence of a schizophrenia spectrum disorder that you managed to channel productively for much of your life, but that became more pronounced and less controllable as you aged. The voices today are mixing past and present, memory and vision. You hear your mother's voice, disappointed that you didn't become a priest like your father. You hear your teachers at the Austrian Polytechnic in Graz, where you studied electrical engineering but never completed your degree. You hear Thomas Edison's laugh as he refused to pay you. You hear George Westinghouse's assurances of support, followed by the sound of him withdrawing funding when your ideas became too radical, too threatening to established economic interests. And underneath all the voices, you hear the hum of alternating current in the hotel's walls. 60 cycles per second, the frequency you championed, and that became the American standard. The electricity flowing through this building is your legacy, your gift to civilization. Every light, every motor, every electrical device in the New Yorker hotel runs on principles you developed. But this brings no comfort. You are surrounded by your greatest achievement, living inside a monument to your own genius, and yet you are completely alone, nearly penniless, waiting to die. Your insomnia has been chronic for your entire adult life. You famously claim to sleep only 2 hours per night, dozing occasionally to recharge, but never achieving deep, restorative sleep. Modern sleep research would explain that you were almost certainly suffering from severe sleep deprivation your entire life, which would compound obsessive-compulsive symptoms, worsen paranoia, and contribute to the invasive thoughts and visions. Your mind never rested, never quieted, never found peace. Even when you tried to sleep, the visions continued, blueprints rotating, calculations cascading, memories playing like films you couldn't pause or stop. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you think about all the inventions that remain locked inside your dying brain. You hold 700 patents granted in multiple countries, but you always claimed there were far more inventions you never patented, either because you lacked the money to file patents, or because you feared the ideas would be stolen, or because you believed some technologies were too dangerous to release into the world. You spoke of earthquake machines that could use resonance to demolish buildings. You described particle beam weapons beyond even the death ray. You theorized about anti-gravity propulsion systems. You claimed to have perfected wireless power transmission far beyond what Wardenclyffe demonstrated. You hinted at weather control technologies. How many of these inventions were real, and how many were the fantasies of a brilliant but deteriorating mind? There's no way to know. Your eidetic memory stored everything with equal clarity, but eidetic memories die with their owners. Whatever was truly locked inside your brain will vanish when your heart stops beating. The FBI will seize 80 trunks of your documents and notes. Only 60 of those trunks will eventually arrive at the Tesla Museum in Belgrade after a years-long legal battle between your nephew and the US government. 20 trunks will simply vanish, their contents unknown to this day. Did those 20 trunks contain functional designs for world-changing technologies, or did they contain the increasingly disorganized notes of a man whose genius was being consumed by mental illness? Both possibilities are equally plausible and equally tragic. Evening arrives, and you're thinking about the pigeons again. You can no longer walk to Bryant Park to feed them yourself. The 1937 taxi accident, when you were crossing a street and were struck by a moving cab, left you with 3 broken ribs and severe back injuries that never properly healed. You're too weak now, too unsteady on your feet. Instead, you telephone Western Union and arrange for messengers to scatter seeds in your usual feeding locations. Then you call back to confirm the messengers completed the task, and you call back again to make sure the pigeons found the food. The Western Union operators know you by now. They tolerate your obsessive follow-up calls, perhaps out of respect for who you once were, or perhaps simply out of pity for the lonely old man who cares more about birds than humans. Why pigeons? The question has puzzled biographers and psychologists. One theory is that pigeons represented the only form of connection that didn't trigger your various anxieties and phobias. Pigeons didn't have hair that would disturb you if touched. Pigeons didn't wear pearl necklaces. Pigeons didn't betray you like Edison, abandon you like Morgan, steal from you like competitors. Pigeons asked nothing except food, offered nothing except their presence. It was a relationship stripped to its absolute essentials. Care offered, care accepted, no complexity, no danger, no disappointment. Your isolation in room 3327 is profound in a way that's difficult for socially connected people to truly comprehend. You have lived in hotels for decades, never maintaining a permanent home. The Waldorf Astoria from 1900 to 1919. Then, the Hotel St. Regis, the Marguerite, the Pennsylvania, the Governor Clinton. Finally, the New Yorker Hotel since 1934, where you will spend your final years. You never married. You never had children. You never maintained lasting friendships. Mark Twain was perhaps your closest friend in the 1890s and early 1900s. He visited your laboratory, posed for early photographs under your electrical apparatuses, shared your sense of humor and intellectual curiosity. But Twain passed away in 1910. By 1943, everyone from your generation is gone. You have outlived your entire social world. At 7 o'clock in the evening, your mind drifts back to your glory years, to the 1890s and early 1900s, when you were not just a scientist, but a celebrity. You demonstrated your Tesla coil to stunned audiences, shooting lightning bolts across laboratories, illuminating wireless light bulbs by simply standing near them. People called you a magician, a wizard. Celebrities flocked to your demonstrations. You dined with the elite of New York society. Women found you attractive, mysterious, and some, according to historical accounts, even pursued you romantically, though you never reciprocated. You remember the Colorado Springs Laboratory in 1899, perhaps the peak of your experimental work. You built a massive experimental station there, specifically to study high-voltage electrical phenomena and wireless power transmission. You created artificial lightning bolts 135 feet long. You generated thunder that could be heard 15 miles away. You illuminated 200 light bulbs wirelessly from a distance of 25 miles. Neighbors reported seeing your laboratory surrounded by electrical phenomena that made it look like the building was haunted, or that you were summoning demonic forces. It was the most powerful electrical experimentation in human history up to that point, and you were at the center of it, utterly in your element, pushing the boundaries of what was thought physically possible. In 1898, you demonstrated the first radio-controlled boat at Madison Square Garden. The crowd thought it was either magic or trickery because the concept of remote control didn't exist in public consciousness yet. You had invented radio-controlled technology, the foundation for all modern robotics, remote-controlled devices, and countless military applications. But Guglielmo Marconi got credit for inventing radio itself. The two of you fought a bitter patent battle that lasted decades. The U.S. Supreme Court finally ruled in your favor in 1943, declaring you the father of radio and overturning Marconi's patents. But the ruling came months after your death. You never knew you'd been vindicated. You died believing history had robbed you of that recognition. The memories turn darker as the evening progresses. In 1912, you and Thomas Edison were both nominated for the Nobel Prize in Physics. According to some historical accounts, the prize committee wanted to award it jointly to both of you for your contributions to electrical science. But one of you refused to share it with the other. The historical record is unclear on who rejected whom. Some sources claim you refused to accept a prize shared with Edison after his betrayal. Other sources suggest Edison couldn't bear sharing recognition with you. Regardless of who bears responsibility, the result was the same. Neither of you received the prize that year. The Nobel Committee gave it to Swedish scientist Niels Gustav Dalén instead, for his contributions to lighthouse technology. You never won a Nobel Prize, which is regarded by modern historians as one of the most glaring oversights in the award's history. At 8 o'clock in the evening, you're back in the present moment in your hotel room, and your mind won't stop working even though you're exhausted. Your brain continues calculating even when you consciously try to rest. You see equations in the pattern of peeling wallpaper. You count the number of cracks in the plaster, 273. You divide by 3, 91. Acceptable. The electromagnetic field from the hotel's electrical system creates patterns you can somehow perceive, a sensitivity you've had since childhood that makes you acutely aware of electrical phenomena that other people cannot detect. The paranoid thoughts cycle through your consciousness. Is the FBI listening through the walls? You know they're monitoring you, that they want your death ray plans, that they're waiting for you to die so they can seize everything. This isn't paranoid delusion, it's accurate assessment of reality. The FBI does have a file on you. The Office of Alien Property Custodian does have jurisdiction over your estate because you're foreign-born. Military intelligence is genuinely interested in your particle beam weapon claims. World War II is raging, and any technology that could shift the balance of power is of intense interest to government agencies. So your suspicion is justified, which makes it harder to distinguish from the unjustified suspicions that also plague you. Did George Westinghouse truly value you, or did he just use you? Were your missing pigeons killed by enemies, or did they simply fly away? Is the death ray safe locked inside your mind, or could thoughts be stolen with electromagnetic devices? These questions spiral without resolution, mixing legitimate concerns with increasingly fantastical theories, and your exhausted brain can no longer sort rationale from irrational. You think about your regrets. Never married. Never experienced romantic love with another human being, unless you count the pigeon, which some part of you knows is absurd, even as another part insists it was the purest love you ever knew. Never had children to carry on your work, to inherit your knowledge, to transform your mental library into a new generation of innovations. Never achieved free wireless power for all humanity. Never received full recognition during your lifetime for the scope of your contributions. You changed the fundamental infrastructure of human civilization, and yet you're dying in debt, largely forgotten by the public, remembered more for eccentricity than for genius. The calculations you cannot escape. At your peak, after the Westinghouse deal, you were worth the equivalent of approximately $19 million in today's currency. Your current net worth is negative. You owe the hotel thousands of dollars. You survive on a small pension from the Yugoslav American community, on occasional payments from the Westinghouse Corporation out of corporate charity rather than obligation, and on the forbearance of hotel management. You count your friends, perhaps one, your biographer John O'Neill, who visits occasionally and seems to genuinely care whether you live or die. Number of people who visit regularly, 0. Number of days until your death. Some instinct tells you it's soon, very soon. At 9 o'clock in the evening, you become aware that government agents are indeed watching your hotel. This isn't paranoid fantasy. According to FBI files declassified in 2016, the Bureau was monitoring you in your final years, particularly interested in your claims about the death ray. The Office of Alien Property Custodian had already made plans for what would happen when you passed away. They had legal authority to seize the possessions of foreign-born individuals, and they fully intended to examine everything you left behind. Your nephew Sava Kosanovic, a Yugoslav official, was also under surveillance because the government feared he might try to smuggle your papers out of the country, potentially delivering them to Soviet scientists. What the government agents don't know is that the most important inventions may not be written down anywhere. The death ray plans, if they're real, if the device would actually function, exist in your eidetic memory. And your memory is failing now. You experience lapses, moments of confusion, difficulty recalling recent events, even as events from 60 years ago remain crystal clear. The greatest library of inventions and innovations ever assembled in a single human brain is beginning to burn, and there's no way to save it. No backup system exists for human genius. When your neurons stop firing, when your synapses cease their electrochemical conversations, everything stored there will vanish as completely as if it never existed. 10 o'clock at night, and you're engaged in your final obsessive rituals before attempting sleep. You must wash your hands 3 times before bed, but 3 times doesn't feel adequate tonight. 3 more times, and 3 more. Your skin is raw and cracked. Some of the cracks bleed, but the compulsion is stronger than physical discomfort, stronger than rationality, stronger than the part of your mind screaming that this is irrational behavior. This is what obsessive-compulsive disorder truly is, not quirky perfectionism or amusing eccentricity, but a prison where the bars are made of thoughts you cannot control and compulsions you cannot resist. The number 3 must be satisfied everywhere. Pillows arranged in groups of 3. Towels folded in thirds. Steps from bed to bathroom counted and recounted until you're certain the number is 18. If you miscount, if you suspect you miscounted, you must start over. Hours can evaporate in these rituals. Your brilliant mind, the mind that revolutionized electrical engineering, is trapped in recursive loops of counting and checking, the intellectual equivalent of a record player stuck on a scratch, repeating the same groove endlessly. The food restrictions are equally rigid. Anything round cannot be eaten. No apples, no oranges, no grapes, no peaches. The hotel staff knows your requirements and sends up safe foods: bread, milk, vegetable juices, but you barely eat. You've been slowly starving for years, your body consuming itself, your weight dropping to dangerous levels. At 6 feet 2 inches tall, weighing 135 pounds, you're essentially a skeleton wrapped in skin. Your body is failing, and you know it. Your heart, weakened by decades of stress, poor nutrition, and chronic sleep deprivation, is struggling to keep you alive. The celibacy that you proclaimed as essential to your genius, was it truly a choice, or was it necessity driven by your profound difficulty with human connection? You've been celibate for 86 years. You've proclaimed publicly that sexual energy diverted toward romantic pursuits would diminish your scientific capabilities. You told reporters that your chastity was very helpful to your scientific abilities. But did you ever lie awake wondering what you'd missed? Did you ever feel the loneliness of it? Or did your unusual brain simply not generate those desires that consume other people? It's midnight now, and you're lying in bed unable to sleep despite overwhelming exhaustion. This has been your existence for decades. Desperate need for rest, combined with complete inability to achieve it. Your mind continues working, continues calculating, continues presenting visions, whether you want them or not. You see your brother Dane, dead for 79 years, yet more vivid in your memory than people you saw last week. You see the white pigeon, gone for 21 years, yet more present to you than any living human. You see Wardenclyffe Tower, destroyed 26 years ago, yet still standing in your mind, still humming with the potential to transform civilization. And you see your inventions, all 700 of them, spinning in the darkness behind your eyelids. The alternating current motor, the Tesla coil, the radio, the fluorescent light, the remote control, the hydroelectric generator, the principles of radar, the spark plug for the internal combustion engine, the rotating magnetic field, wireless power transmission. Each invention is perfect in your memory, each one a small miracle of human ingenuity, each one a piece of your mind made manifest in the physical world. But you also see the inventions that never left your head. The perfected death ray, the wireless power system that would make electricity free for all humanity, the earthquake machine, the anti-gravity device, the weather control apparatus. How many of these were real? How many could have worked? How many were the fevered dreams of a brilliant but unstable mind? Even you, in these final days, can no longer distinguish with certainty between inspiration and delusion, between vision and hallucination, between genius and madness. The next 2 days will be your last. On January 5th, 1943, you will place the "Do Not Disturb" sign on your door for the final time. You will climb into this bed and never rise from it again. Your heart, that faithful organ that has served you for 86 years despite your terrible care of it, will develop a blood clot. Coronary thrombosis, the medical examiner will report. On January 7, 1943, a maid named Alice Monaghan will ignore the "Do Not Disturb" sign, will enter room 3327, and will find you dead, reportedly naked except for your socks. Within hours of the discovery, FBI agents will arrive. The Office of Alien Property Custodian will seize everything: 80 trunks of documents, notes, equipment, and personal effects. John G. Trump, the MIT professor, will be called in to examine the materials. His report will state there is nothing dangerous, nothing that constitutes a hazard in unfriendly hands. But many of your documents will be classified by the government and kept secret for decades. Some remain classified even now, 78 years after your death, and 20 trunks will vanish somewhere between their seizure in New York and their eventual arrival at the Tesla Museum in Belgrade. 20 trunks. What was in them? What secrets, what inventions, what pieces of your genius disappeared into government archives or were simply lost? No one knows. No one will ever know. Your funeral on January 10th, 1943, will be attended by 2,000 people. Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia will read a eulogy. The crowd will be a mixture of admirers, curiosity seekers, and a handful of genuine mourners. But the truth is, you died as you lived for most of your life. Famous, but profoundly alone. Celebrated, but not truly known. Surrounded by the evidence of your genius, yet unable to find peace or comfort in it. The legacy you leave behind is staggering in scope. The alternating current electrical system powers the entire modern world. The principles of radio and wireless communication that you pioneered enable everything from television to Wi-Fi to cellular phones. Remote control technology, robotics, fluorescent lighting, neon signs, all trace their lineage back to your work. The Tesla coil is still used in radio technology and educational demonstrations. Your contributions to X-ray development and radar principles saved countless lives. The hydroelectric systems you designed continue generating clean, renewable power decades later. But what died with you may be equally significant. The death ray, if it was real, if it could have functioned as you claimed, vanished with your last breath. The perfected wireless power transmission system that could have freed humanity from dependence on power lines and energy corporations exists only in fragments of notes that may or may not describe a working system. Hundreds of unpatented inventions, whatever they were, whatever they might have achieved, died in your brain when your neurons stopped firing. And perhaps most tragic of all, the cost of genius itself died with you. You spent 86 years trapped inside a mind that was simultaneously the greatest gift and the cruelest prison. You could see the future, but couldn't escape your compulsions. You could illuminate the world, but couldn't find peace in the darkness of your own thoughts. You could love a pigeon with profound depth, but couldn't connect with another human being. You revolutionized civilization, but died penniless and alone in a hotel room, surrounded by the very electrical systems you invented, fed by the alternating current you gave to the world, yet finding no comfort in any of it. This is why you wouldn't last a day in Nikola Tesla's mind. You would experience visions of such clarity and brilliance that they would blind you to ordinary reality. You would be compelled to count everything, to wash your hands until they bled, to arrange objects in patterns that satisfy arbitrary rules, to avoid spherical objects and human hair, and countless other triggers that would make normal life impossible. You would hear voices that may be inspiration, or may be madness, and you would lack the ability to distinguish between them. You would be capable of insights that could change civilization, but unable to trust anyone enough to bring them to fruition. You would see the future of technology, but be trapped in the obsessions of your past. You would be the loneliest genius in history, more intimate with electromagnetic fields than with any human being, finding your only comfort in the presence of birds who cannot judge or betray or understand the scope of what you've lost. Genius and madness, the old saying goes, are separated by a thin line. But in Tesla's case, they weren't separated at all. They were two sides of the same phenomenon, two aspects of a brain that was wired differently from the beginning, that could perceive and calculate and visualize in ways that other humans could not, but that paid for those abilities with compulsions, anxieties, and isolation that would have broken most people long before age 86. If this story helped you drift off, or if it made you grateful for the simple peace of your own mind, the ability to touch things without revulsion, to see spherical objects without panic, to sleep more than 2 hours a night, to connect with other human beings without overwhelming anxiety, if it made you appreciate the gift of an ordinary, stable consciousness, then consider leaving a like or subscribing. I'm always curious what time it is where you're watching from tonight. And as you fall asleep in your bed, in your home, surrounded perhaps by people who care about you, with electric lights powered by alternating current, with wireless devices connecting you to the entire world, with all the technology that makes modern life possible, remember that all of it, the lights, the electricity, the wireless communication, the very foundation of technological civilization, came from one man's tortured, brilliant, impossible mind. A mind that changed the world but could never find peace within itself. A mind that saw the future but remained trapped by the past. A mind that illuminated civilization but died alone in the darkness. A mind so extraordinary that you couldn't survive inside it for even a single day. The lights in your room flow with alternating current, 60 cycles per second, the frequency that Tesla championed, and that became the standard for most of the Americas. The same current he visualized in Budapest in 1882. The same current that powered his dreams at Wardenclyffe and bankrupted him. The same current that flows through our world now, humming in the walls, invisible but everywhere, outliving its creator by 81 years and counting. In a way, his mind never truly died. It's present in every electrical system, in every motor, in every transmission line. The pattern of his thoughts, the structure of his visions, the mathematics of his insights, they're woven into the physical infrastructure of modern civilization. He wanted to give the world free wireless power. Instead, he gave us the wired power that transformed everything. Not what he intended, not what he hoped for, but perhaps enough. Perhaps more than enough. Tesla once said, "The present is theirs. The future, for which I really worked, is mine." He was right. In 1943, dying alone and broke, it seemed he had lost everything. But in the decades since, his reputation has grown. His contributions have been recognized, and his name has become synonymous with innovation and genius. The unit of magnetic flux density in the International System of Units is called the Tesla. Tesla, Inc., the electric vehicle company, bears his name. Countless books, films, and documentaries explore his life and work. The future he worked for has arrived, and it remembers him. But would he have found comfort in that? Would posthumous fame have satisfied the lonely man feeding pigeons in Bryant Park? Would recognition decades after death have eased the pain of dying forgotten? We can't know. What we know is that genius often comes at a terrible cost, that extraordinary abilities can coexist with extraordinary suffering, and that the minds that change the world are not always minds at peace with themselves. Sleep well tonight with your ordinary, beautiful, functional mind. Sleep deeply, as Tesla never could. Sleep surrounded by the electrical hum of his legacy, the alternating current flowing through walls, the wireless signals carrying information through the air, all the invisible technologies that he gave us. Sleep with gratitude that you can touch things without revulsion, see pearls without panic, connect with other humans without overwhelming anxiety. Sleep knowing that somewhere in the humming darkness, in the electromagnetic fields that surround us, in the very current that powers our lives, a piece of Tesla's tortured genius still exists. And perhaps, in whatever exists beyond this world, Tesla finally found what eluded him in life: peace, rest, and freedom from the compulsions that ruled him. Perhaps he can finally sleep for more than 2 hours. Perhaps the visions have stopped, the voices have quieted, and the numbers no longer demand to be counted. Perhaps he finally understands that he was enough, that his contributions mattered, that his suffering was not meaningless. Or perhaps, being Tesla, he's still working, still calculating, still seeing inventions that don't exist yet, still trying to perfect wireless power transmission across the dimensions between life and death. Still counting, always counting, everything divisible by 3, forever. The darkness deepens. The alternating current hums its 60-cycle song. And somewhere in the space between sleep and waking, between genius and madness, between the past and the future, Nikola Tesla's mind continues its eternal work, never resting, never stopping, never finding peace, but never ceasing to illuminate the darkness for the rest of us. Good night.